Hi, and welcome to the Quest Dog. Today we are taking Decatur to a pet-friendly artisan mall, but the real training happens before we even step inside. Come with us as we look at arousal regulation in real life, a step-by-step training walkthrough of Decatur's training session today. First, I want to introduce you to Decatur. Decatur is a 10-month-old Portuguese water dog. He's here with me in his last week of a 5-week board and train, where we've been focusing on hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and reactivity, especially in new environments, exciting environments, around novel stimuli, people, and dogs. What we're focusing on today is that arousal regulation in a new environment. He has been to this mall once before, but not for very long. And we also ended up working some surprise polite greetings. Throughout this session walkthrough, you're going to see how we warm up, how we practice calm greetings, how we rest, reset, and revisit our walking and engagement, and just generally how we help him handle a busy and stimulating environment. When we as trainers talk about taking our dogs out to work in public places, I think the expectation that we are often met with is that our time spent will look a lot like the pie chart on the left. That, yes, maybe there's a little bit of time spent warming up, but the huge amount of time is spent walking in that new environment, working in that new environment, doing new things in that new environment, all of that hard stuff. Look at that. Polite greetings, walking past distractions, all of that. And then maybe there's a little bit of a cool down and then we wrap up. But that the majority of that time is really spent working and walking around the new environment. And that's just simply not the case. And I thought that Decatur's session really, really emphasized how many different things go into working in a public space. First and foremost, the warm up is going to take, I would say, about a third of the entirety of the session. Decatur, you'll see this session was about 30 minutes. We spent about 10 minutes outside just getting settled and ready to go in and ready to work. And then another significant portion is being spent on resting and resetting in the midst of all of this work. And yes, there is a good portion of walking around a new environment, but almost equal to that is going to be time spent managing unexpected distractions, things that come up. One of the moments that you'll see captured here is when I had two of the shop owners at this mall come out and ask if they could say hi. Decatur was doing really well, so I said yes, but we had not planned to work on polite greetings today. So that was a huge unexpected distraction. When we first came in, there was a gentleman who wanted to talk to me about his dog. That was another huge unexpected distraction right as we were getting into a new space. So a lot of time spent managing those things. And then lastly, the cool down is not just this short kind of tacked on to the end piece of the entire session. It is its own dedicated segment. So there's a whole lot going on within these sessions that goes far, far beyond just walking around and practicing in a new environment. So let's look first at this warm up. And you can see this is sped up significantly. Like I said, it was about a 10-minute session. And as we were walking down, I noticed that Decatur wasn't taking food. How Decatur and I typically work is that he is allowed and encouraged to kind of take in the world at his own pace, how he needs to, provided that he can respond to me when I ask him for his attention and that he is able to take food. And while he was still responding to me, he stopped being able to take food at a certain point during our walk down towards the mall. So, our rule when he cannot take food is that we stay still. We can take in the environment. We can do whatever he needs to do. This is where we did walk off to the side because someone was coming up the sidewalk. But we are not going to move unless someone's going to pass us. We are not going to move until he can offer me a sit and then a down or directly into a down. And when he's in that down, while he's in that down, he can take 3 consecutive treats. That's because I want both enough relaxation for him to offer a down, a controlled position in this new environment, but I also want him to be able to actually sit and chew and breathe through eating to show me that he is in fact calm enough to functionally eat. Um, and then once he has that, then we move on. You can see it took him a very long time. There were a lot of people passing, a lot of things going on. And through all this, he didn't have a reaction at all. He just needed to look at a lot of things. He got very excited at one point. And then once he got that last burst of excitement out, he settled down shortly after and was able to take those 3 treats. And only then did we start walking down towards the mall and making our way to the next segment of this process and of this training session, which is starting to approach the chaos. So approaching that chaos, we started at 3:09 p.m. So we are 11 minutes already into our session. And as soon as we walk in the door, there was a lovely gentleman who wanted to talk to me all about this dog and all about the dogs that he knows and his dog who recently passed away. And I think when I come into a public space with a dog, people are really excited to share their experiences with dogs. And this guy was great. He did not approach Decatur any closer than where he kind of saw us and was standing. So while we weren't kind of going right into our session or right into our next step, I let Decatur kind of just process. If he turned towards me, if he offered me attention, he absolutely got a treat. But at this point, he's just kind of watching as I talk to this guy. He's keeping an eye on the guy. He's taking in this brand new environment. This building is almost entirely wooden. And there are 2 stories. The top is an open, like, balcony story. So everything creaks. There was a service and supply closet just to our left where someone had just been in and out. So I'm sure there was cleaning supply smells. There's a lot of bustle from all of the stores that are kind of surrounding us. And we're in this nice little foyer and vestibule. And look at that right there. He came and looked in at me. There is nice little entrance vestibule where there wasn't a lot going on, but we're looking out into this big open space where there is a lot going on. So what I look for in this moment, whether we get caught by someone who wants to chat or whether there just is immediately chaos upon entering a public space, which there likely is, what I'm looking for is, can you reorient back to me? If the dog is not near a full reaction, if they're just a little bit tense and checking everything out, I want to give them the space to take that in. And then I'm going to reward them when they choose to reconnect with me. And once they're reconnecting with me, then we can kind of pause, reset, make sure that we're connected before we start the really, really hard work. So we started that pause and reset at 3:13. And so we sat down. I sat down on that bench that you can see behind me. And you can see Decatur is fighting that reset initially. He's still getting used to his head halter, so there's a little bit of fighting with the head halter there. But once he stops doing that, he settles into this really nice down. And again, we went over kind of what our rules are for that down. When he goes into a down, I want that down to be offered. So I'm not asking anything of him in this moment. All I'm doing is I'm sitting with the leash at a set length. I'm not giving him more leash. I'm not taking away leash. I'm sitting with the leash at a set length and I'm letting him take in the environment. I'm only going to intervene if he seems like he's approaching a reaction, if he needs space from something that kind of arises. But he chooses this lovely down on his own. He's still kind of checking out the world. And I'm making sure that if I offer food to him and he doesn't go for it, like there, I'll offer it. I'll kind of tap it to make sure he knows it's there. But all right, if you don't want it, I'm not going to force that on you until you turn towards me and you want to take that treat. And we're going to take 3 consecutive treats before we move on. And this is where we can start actually working in the space, which started at 3:15. So 3:15, I want to really capture our big breakthrough moment. We've been walking around the store quite a bit. There had been a few people passing. I love this time of day because it's not super crowded. It's not super busy. but there is enough of a consistent flow of people who's very interested in all the shops. And so this lady had noticed that he had stopped and was kind of staring into a shop, and I was just letting him stare because he wasn't doing anything wrong. He just needed a moment to process. But she came out and she said, "Oh my goodness, he's so cute. Can I say hi?" And I went, "You know what? He's doing great. We're connected. We've been having a really great session. Yes, let's practice these polite greetings." And he did phenomenal. So what I do to ask Decatur for a polite greeting is I ask him to keep his attention on me until I invite him to say hi. And he has been taught to say hi by kind of curling against someone's leg rather than coming into them face first, because if he's going face first, he's going to want to spring up onto them. Now, this was a little bit of a test for him because she wanted to give him a treat. And when she gave him a treat, she did ask him to sit. And sit he did. And he did not jump on her, which I was very, very happy with, because this is a position, and he is tucked behind my leg here, which is unfortunate. This is a position that's really, really difficult for a lot of dogs, especially young, bouncy adolescents, because they are sitting directly in front of this new person with all of this excitement. And for Decatur, really, really challenging arousal feelings building up. And that's so easy to build up into a bounce. So once he kind of turned his attention back to me, I'm rewarding on the ground. I'm making sure he gets a lot of encouragement every time he interacts with me. And once he said hi to these ladies, took some treats, and they were done and they were kind of moving on with their conversation, that's when we moved on to. And it was shortly after this moment, because this moment was so intense, that we moved into our cool down. I said, we're going to go ahead and go outside. So 3:27, we are outside, and Decatur spots a squirrel that scrambled across the woods that's off to our left. This is going to look in a lot of ways very similar to our warm up, except for one big, big difference. In a cool down, I am much more likely to step in and move Decatur through the process of our settle down, take 3 treats. And that's because I'm very conscious that at this point we are working with limited capacity. He has done so much by this point. We are a half hour in. He has worked on relaxing to go into this really challenging environment. He has been polite with all of these people passing and greeted these ladies so nicely that I don't want to end this on a bad note. And I know that his mental capacity just isn't there. We can only ask so much of our dogs, especially when they're just developmentally, they are not ready to have the same level of impulse control that they'll have when they're an adult. So you can see he's not super interested in the food right now. You saw earlier, I kind of tapped his back hip to get him to turn around, to prompt a little bit of a this way. And you'll see very shortly that I'm going to squat down and actually support him, trying to point out the treats. And he is actually taking them into his mouth and then letting them fall out, because he's at the end of his rope. He's having a really tough time. And that's where I squat down to support him. The physical proximity and physical reassurance, and I'm kind of patting him with my other hand too occasionally. The physical proximity and physical reassurance can help our dogs connect a little bit better. And the other thing I'm noticing is maybe he's not up for finding that food on the ground. So he's having some difficulty, and I say, no, we're gonna lay back down. So I use the treats to kind of lure him back into that down, and I'm being kind of insistent on cueing the down rather than waiting for it to be offered. And rather than kind of letting him show interest in those treats down at the ground, I am going to go ahead and hand feed him each of those treats, and we get those 5 treats in, and okay, we're going to move on now. We're going to start walking up back towards the car. And he's already walking in a much more calm manner and was able to reconnect with me. And that is the end of our quest. So this session wasn't about walking as much as building a dog who can handle being in a new environment. So when you're doing sessions like this out and about with your dogs, keep in mind that kind of division of all the different pieces of the session, and that the majority of the session really probably won't be the thing the session is focusing on. You want to leave a lot of time for warming up, for adjusting, for resetting, and for managing around unexpected distractions, and then time to cool down and reconnect before you wrap the session. Um, if you're working on arousal with regulation with your dog, I would love to hear what settings are hardest for you and what you've found the most helpful. So leave me a comment. And if you'd like coaching for real world confidence building, check out my virtual training options, which will be listed in the description. I'll see you soon.